So this is part two of the Ojer Axonil Double Feature. If you came from the other video, welcome over here. If this is the first time finding one of my two videos, you can catch the link at the end of this video for that other one, which is the Historic Brawl variation of Ojer Axonil. For now, let's go ahead and get into what cards I would run in the Commander version of the deck that doesn't have access or doesn't work as well in Historic Brawl. So thanks to the Commander pool of cards that we have access to, we have a lot better ways of punishing our opponents and punishing multiple opponents rather than how the deck was built in Historic Brawl. So let's take a look at a few things that I would add to this deck, and you can check the deck list down below to see what cards got swapped out of that original Historic Brawl version to build up this Commander version of the deck. So let's start with cards that split damage between opponents. That's the key here for a multiplayer game, is to be able to hit all of our opponents at once rather than one opponent that we're just doming over and over again. So we'll start off with Inferno Titan. Now this is available on the Arena client. However, it does not do much for us in the game because we're not hitting multiple opponents. We're only going after that one opponent. You are better served in Historic Brawl with a single pinger. Whereas this, when it enters the battlefield or attacks, it deals 3 damage divided as among you choose. Well, if you divide 1, 1, and 1, you can deal a minimum of 4 damage to each of those opponents off of Ojer Axonil's boosting ability. We also have another creature with an ETB ability that allows us to split the damage off of it, and that is Boggart Hellkite. For 8 mana, you get a flash flying 5/5 dragon that when it enters, you can deal 5 damage divided however you choose among creatures or players. So you can go ahead and do, a couple creatures up or a single creature with 2 damage, and then the remaining 3 damage in a pod, you can just be like, boom, boom, boom. You're taking a minimum of 4 apiece just off of this trigger going off and splitting the damage. Then moving into some instants and sorceries that do some similar effects for splitting damage, we have Violent Eruption for 4 mana. You can deal 4 damage divided however you choose among creatures or players. So it's a very similar trigger setup to the Boggart Hellkite and the Inferno Titan, but it's at instant speed. And what you can do then is go 1 to your creature and do 1/1/1, deal 4 damage, or whatever pump amount that the Ojer Axonil has been bumped to. And we'll talk about better ways of pumping his power up that are available in Commander in just a little bit. Then we have a card that is going to be give us some modality, but you're really only going to want to pick the one mode if Ojer Axonil's around. Fiery Confluence, 4 mana sorcery, choose 3. You can choose the same mode more than once. Either deal 1 damage to each creature, do 2 damage to each opponent, or destroy target artifact. Well, that middle one is the one we are interested in, because at minimum it does 4 damage per activation to your opponent. So you're going to go 4/4/4. This for 4 mana is going to deal 12 damage at base value as long as Ojer Axonil is around. And if you're able to pump him, it just gets better and better and better as you go. And then the last 2 instants and sorceries I'm going to add here are X spells that allow us to do some damage splitting. First up is the OG Classic Fireball. X in a red sorcery deals X damage divided evenly rounded down among players or creatures and players. So as an additional cost, you pay 1 each for the target beyond the first. So since it's doing an even amount divided, all you got to do is make sure that you do the 4th damage. So you pay 4 into the X, and then you pay 4 more into that to get the damage splits past the initial target. Actually, it's going to be 3, because you need to target 1 creature and then all 3 opponents. That's the 4 damage evenly split, so you don't have to round down to 2. And then you can go ahead and just blast them for whatever amount of power that Ojer is sitting at. And then if we don't want to actually work like just stupid hoops that we got to jump through with the Fireball and trying to figure out how much we got to pay into it, we can always just play Comet Storm for X red red, multi-kicker 1, choose a target creature or player, and then choose another for each time it was kicked and it deals X damage. All you got to do then is you pay 1 into the X, and then for each opponent, pay 1 additional mana into it. So in theory, you pay 6 mana to deal 4 damage at base to each one of them, and then it gets just better as you can scale up with Ojer Axonil. Now, if you watched the other video, you noticed I was using the enchantment Repercussion in that deck to help us punch extra damage through. Now, that can actually come back and bite us in the butt if their stuff is too big and then the damage gets reflected back on us, because it does affect us as well. So I did find an enchantment in my stuff that I thought was kind of interesting and works really well here, and that is Heat of Battle. For 2 mana, you get an enchantment that says whenever a creature blocks, it deals 1 damage to that creature's controller. So it still hits us, but it breaks a lot of that parity. You're going to get hit for, the 1 damage if you block one of their creatures, but they're going to get hit for a minimum of 4 damage off of your stuff getting blocked. And it could be as little as a little 1/1. And if they want to take out that 1/1 or 2/1 or whatever, they're going to pay for it. I'm also going to include an oldie but goodie in Zozu the Punisher, 3 mana 2/2 that whenever a land comes into play, it deals 2 damage to that land's controller. So it's going to affect us. We're going to take the 2, but then they're going to take whatever the Ojer Axonil's power is. So it's going to be an asymmetrical thing. Again, that's how I built the one in Historic Brawl, was to work off of asymmetrical affecting. We're going to take some damage, but they're going to take more damage. And in the same vein, I have 2 enchantments for 4 mana that do a similar effect and can really, really punish our opponents if they have to try to use their mana to actually do anything the rest of the game while these exist. We have Mana Barbs and Burning Earth. Mana Barb says whenever a land is tapped for mana, it deals 1 damage to that player, and Burning Earth says whenever a non-basic land is tapped for mana, deal 1 damage. So every time they tap a land, that's 1 damage trigger, and it means 4, 4, 4, 4. So if they have to tap, say, 4 lands to kill your Mana Barbs or 4 lands to kill your Burning Earth, they're going to take 16 base damage off of that trigger to tap those lands in order to stop you from doing that, or to try to get rid of Ojer Axonil or whatever they're trying to do. So that's going to cause a lot of consternation. So you need to be able to try to prepare yourself to stop them. So we're also going to include copies of things like Blasphemous Act and cards that help us sweep the board up and keep it under control, because you're going to probably draw a lot of hate playing cards like Mana Barbs and Burning Earth. And as I said earlier, we have cards that are better than what's available in the arena client for pumping up our commander, because the other side of the coin here is, if we want to really do a lot of damage with Ojer Axonil, we need to get him above that 4 base damage boost. So in order to do that, we need to have better equipment, better enchantments, whatever you have you. So let's take a look. First off, let's look at Bloodsworn Steward. For 4 mana, you get a 4/4 Vampire Knight with flying. Commander creatures you control have +2/+2 and have haste. So this is going to make Ojer Axonil straight up a 6/6 with haste and trample, as long as this thing's sitting around. So it makes a good addition into this deck for pumping him up and actually being able to make him swing the turn he comes out, as long as you have this. I also want to include a copy of Tenza Godo's Maul. 3 colorless equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 as long as it's legendary. Hey, there's a checkbox. It gets an additional +2/+2, and as long as it's red, it has trample. Well, Ojer Axonil already has trample, so that's a little remiss. However, +3/+3 for 4 mana essentially, that's really freaking good and puts him up to a base of a 7/7. Another thing I did in the Historic Brawl video, if you watch that, is to use equipment that does big boosts on Ojer Axonil to do a lot of stuff. And 2 things that aren't on Arena that are available to us in Commander. First up is Pen and Blade. 3 colorless, equips for 4. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each creature you control. And then we basically have the same thing out of the Lord of the Rings Commander set. Crown of Gondor. For 3 colorless, equips for 4, +1/+1 for each creature you control, but it has an addendum of when a legendary creature enters the battlefield under your control, if there is no monarch, you become the monarch. So this will introduce monarch into your gameplay as well. But the idea here is you have all of these little pinger creatures. You could play the Burn Down the House for the devils or whatever, and you're going to give yourself a nice little boost of 3, 4, 5 damage on top of whatever Ojer Axonil's equipped is. And this stacks with the other equipment we have in the deck to make him bigger and badder as we go. So those are the additions that I would add to this deck to try and make this deck sing in a multiplayer game. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Did I miss something? Should I have added something else to this deck? I'm all ears. Let me know. And while you're down there, if you like what I'm doing here, please feel free to subscribe. It helps the channel, comment, all those good things that YouTube loves to help push our stuff out into the world. And as always, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. And if you didn't see the Historic Brawl video and you're interested in it, the link for it will be right up here.